7 games on Monday's MLB slate, but how do we make money betting them? That's what you're here to find out. First pitch on WagerTalk TV. Dan Alexander here with you, and we had such a great show on Friday. Figure why don't we run it back with two of the best in the biz? That's right, Steve Merril, Adam Trigger joining me here. And gentlemen, it might be a short slate, but some games that definitely I want to hit on here. We're going to talk A's, Padres, Blue Jays, Brewers, Royals, Yankees, and we'll wrap it up here in Best Bets talking Astros and Giants. Also want to touch upon the O's and Rays games. So that leaves, two other games that I'm sure the chat will ask about as well. But Steve, let's get right into it with one of the games that you have dog-eared here, and that's the A's and the Padres. I mean, I look at this series, and if you're the Padres, you have to be licking your chops, at least on paper, that you get to face the A's. But really the story of the season, Steve, has been Padres either playing up to levels of competition or playing down to teams just like they're seeing here in this 3-game set. You think they can maybe shake that off, start it off with a win here against the A's, or how are you looking to bet this one?
Yes, I agree. I think it's a good spot for San Diego to be focused. This is a San Diego team that I think has underachieved this season, and they've underachieved over the past week. They've gone just 2-6 their last 8. But I've talked about it a lot here on the show that if you look at the road numbers only, and I know this game is in San Diego, I'll talk about that in a moment, but I like looking at road offensive numbers for baseball because it incorporates all different types of ballparks. And Petco is a pitcher-friendly park in general, so you see that the Padres are averaging just 4.5 runs a game this year. You say, oh, that's mediocre. 261 batting average is pretty good. But then you look, they only averaged 4 runs and 234 at home. They're averaging over 5 runs and batting almost 280, 290 on the road this season. I think the road numbers show the true indication of what this offense can do. And so the Padres, in my opinion, remain an underrated team. The fact that they have a better road record than home record, I think some of that's random variance. Meanwhile, the A's, 26-41. Most teams would not be happy with that. I think that's vast overachieving for the A's after a misleading hot start. But this team has now gone 3-8 their last 11. And I think we could fade Oakland as often as possible here over the next several months. And whenever we get a focused team in game one, I talk about this a lot, they usually don't overlook their opponent. Yep. And the fact that San Diego lost yesterday on Sunday to Arizona 9-3, I think it'll be extra focused here. So lots of different ways to play the Padres. Obviously, you can lay the minus 210. You could play the run line, get it way down to 1.5 even. Or as we talked about Friday, you can do a -1. And if you play half a unit run line, half money line, you get around minus 155, -1. But the Padres would be my preferred side in this game tonight.
Steve, you know at 210, the chat is already wondering, hey, if we got to play this at 210, what are we going to find to parlay with it? I already know that that's going to be the question in the chat. So maybe we'll circle back as we go through these games and maybe find a piece there for you. But as Steve said, a couple different ways that you can attack that one. Hop below in the comments and let us know how you are going to attack it, or another game that maybe you have eyed there. Speaking of the chat, shout out to them. They're already buzzing in there, gentlemen, on a Monday afternoon. G Hurt, Titan CT, Tyler, Have Cash, Nick. Shout out to all you, Roger Long as well. While you're hanging out with us live here, make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We would greatly appreciate that. Tyler's in here not only asking about sports picks, he's trying to find a place to get good duck cooked in Connecticut. So if anybody has any thoughts on that one, let my man Tyler know. He's trying to get a nice date night worked up. The only channel where you can not only get sports betting winning picks, you can also get winning dinner picks as well. That's what we do here, gentlemen. Trig, Royals, Yankees. Soto was available yesterday. Yankees opted not to go with them. They were able to salvage the game regardless, but it should be hopefully a nice boost to the hitting offense, you would hope, with Soto coming back here. As far as it goes for Kansas City, we got Lugo on the mound, and Lugo is trying to join what I have dubbed the Ranger Suarez Club, which is a pitcher who has 10 wins on the year as a starting pitcher. So Lugo 9-1, the 2.13 ERA, strong start to the year. The last time we talked about him here, he faltered a little bit, but Trig, is that the side for you, taking some plus money here for the Royals, or Yankees a little ticked off about how that weekend set against the Dodgers kind of went?
Well, I wanted to talk about this game for Big Game Breakdown because it really is the big game. I mean, both these teams are awesome.
Fair.
I love both of these teams, like long-term outlook. I was trying to figure out if the market has caught on to the Royals or not. Like it's not like a surprise that the Royals are really good at this point. Like we've seen enough games and the record is good enough where I think the casual fan can look and say, oh, this is not last year's Royals team. But I mean, I don't know if the masses have caught on to just how good they are, like from the respect that, like, I think the Royals are a legitimate contender. You know, if you get past that sort of top line of like, you know, contenders like the big names, the Yankees, you know, Dodgers, like that top tier line, like the Royals would be in that next tier, in my opinion. And they've been one of the best teams in the league. They've won 13 of their last 21 games. They're averaging over 6 runs per game in that span. It's the best in baseball. And you know, when I look at this series as a whole, Dan, this is like the ultimate sandwich spot. I know Marco kind of take the deli closes during the summer, but he may need to open it here or like get the food truck going or something because this is as much of a sandwich spot as you're going to find in baseball. You have huge home series ending in Sunday Night Baseball against the Dodgers that ends in like a come from behind, high leverage situation win, followed by trip out to Kansas City, followed by Fenway Park this weekend for the Red Sox. Like you're not going to find a bigger like sort of potential like letdown series, I guess, but you know, it's worth pointing out that this is not like years past. This isn't like they're rolling into a 15-win Royals team. This is a really good team, so I do think that it's a little bit more high profile, but still you have to wonder if the Yankees maybe exhale a little bit. The other thing I wonder, I don't know that it's a given that Soto's in the lineup tonight. I know he's like available. I'll need to see a lineup first to know that he's definitely in there. I heard that he was going to come back at some point in this series. I don't know if it's certain that it's here. I will say that if he's in the lineup and it moves the number, it's going to make me like the Royals even more. Like I would have loved a scenario where I could have taken the +1.5 with the Royals at something like -125, -130. Unfortunately, that was a little bit ambitious because I think it was -145 quickly up to -155. But I still think the Royals are the right side. And if you don't like the Royals tonight, like me, it's not going to make my card for my clients tonight, even though it's the way I'm looking. But I will look for a spot to play on the Royals in this series because I don't think the Yankees are going to come into Kansas City with a trip to Fenway on deck, having just played the series that they played with the Dodgers, and just, you know, roll through and sweep this series. Now, the Yankees are going to get priced at some point as like a very elite option in this series. They're 26-8 the last since May 3rd, so basically the last month. They've absolutely owned the Royals. 24-9 in the Aaron Boone era against the Royals. And I think it's being watered down a little bit, Dan, by the fact that the Yankees played on Sunday Night Baseball last night. And the books seem to price that into the number. Like, you're not outsmarting anyone at this point playing against the team that played on Sunday Night Baseball. The books are almost overpricing that into the number at this point because, as we all know, and we've talked about in this show a ton, long term, the team that played on Sunday Night Baseball tends to struggle a little bit the next day. I think that's priced in here. I think both starters are guys that I maybe would want to play against. Carlos Rodon has won 6 straight starts. Like he's been tremendous, but his numbers against the Royals the last couple of years have been horrible. 3 starts since the beginning of 2021 for Rodon, 14.90 ERA means it's been blown up a couple times. And Lugo, I mean, one could make the argument that he just bounces back, but I still think his full season numbers, 9-1, 2.13 ERA, 1.02 WHIP, with less than a strikeout an inning, might be still a little bit like, that may have been the start of some regression for him. So those are all the things, I guess, that concern me. But if we're looking at Royals, Yankees, these two teams next to each other, the gap is not as big as I think most people think from the Yankees to the Royals. This is going to be a competitive series. The Royals will get at least one of these games. I don't think they're getting swept at home. So do you just come out and take the plus money tonight, knowing that if they lose, you can, come back and probably take plus money again tomorrow? And if they split, you're left with a little profit, and then you can figure out what you want to do the rest of the way. You could play it like that. I may be a spectator here, but if you're betting this game, I think the Royals are the right side, and maybe you go try to isolate some of those pitching splits, specifically Rodon, who has horrific numbers against the Royals the last 3 years.
Well, and Tyler Sterling in the chat pointing out something that I think is a fair point, and that's just this Royals bullpen, especially when you look at what the closer does when he's trying to put out some of these games. That's been a nightmare for bettors, and that's been the worry. So, Trig, with Lugo on the mound, and while you were talking there, we saw some of these numbers come across. I mean, the usage stats alone underscore what is a bigger problem here for the Royals. But the great part is you're going to be having an ace like Lugo to start. So why would we not, even at plus money, either take that half a run or even just take him on the money line in the first 5, as opposed to worrying about the bullpen blowing up this plus money spot for him? Is that a concern for you at all, Trig?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I don't really want to trust I think you could make a case that both bullpens come in a little bit like, the Yankees needed to get some big outs last night from their bullpen. So that would lean me toward, if you think there's going to be runs, I would probably look full game over, not first 5 over, just knowing that these pitchers, both starters could be pretty good. Like on their best day, like Lugo on his best day is not getting hit. Rodon's been pretty solid lately, but I just think over the course of the game, I think I would rather have the Royals here. Like I said, I would have loved to get the run head start. If I could have got plus 1.5 at a favorable price, this would have been on the client card. At minus 155, I just can't do it. But I think the Royals are going to be very competitive in this series. So I'll wrap it up there. This is going to be a good series, and the Royals could very well earn a split here.
Yeah, and Steve, a last thought on this one before I want to swing back to just a pitcher prop that was brought up by our man Rick White in the first game that we talked about there. So I'll ask you about that coming up here. But Tyler, now that he knows where he's getting ducked for his girlfriend this evening, he's now wondering what he should bet in this game. And he didn't take a look at the number, but Rodon under strikes or outs, excuse me. Rodon under outs was the question that he was having. I think I'm looking at a 5.5. The under is even money. The concern for me is the outing that he's coming off of, where he picked up 9 Ks. And if you look at just this number, he's cashed it in, I believe, 6 out of his last 8 outings. He had a little stretch there where he was right around the number. But for you, Steve, I know it's not one that you typically release, but when you're capping these games, it's definitely something you look at. Any thought on either pitchers potentially with their strikeout props? It's 5.5 for Rodon. It is 4.5 for Lugo.
Yeah, Rodon, I'm looking now. He's had 6 or more in 6 of the last 8, 5 in one of them. So he's had 5 or more in 7 of the last 8. So you'd have to say it's over or past there. Something real quick, what Adam said, about how this being priced in, I totally agree. I mean, everyone kind of understands it's a bad spot on Monday for these Sunday night ESPN teams. But what's so unique about baseball, and we talk about this a lot, is that they can change the money line as much as they want, but if the team still loses, they lose. Now, granted, long term, if you're giving up too much line value, it does make a difference, but you're still getting the Royals at plus money, and it's still a bad spot for the Yankees, whether they're minus 180, minus 120, plus 250. It doesn't matter if they lose, the other team cashes. So that's, once again, what's so unique about baseball. We don't talk about situational handicapping much, but it's a thing. Unlike the point spreads, last night it lands right on 7. It was 6.5 in some spots, 7.5 in others. It made a difference if you shopped around on that Mavericks line last night. Where in baseball, long term, yes, it makes a difference, but as whether you win or lose tonight, it makes no difference if they price it too low, because it's still a win or lose situation.
And Steve, before we move to another game here, I just want to swing back to the first game that you broke down. We had Rick White in the chat asking, any thoughts on Joey Estes, his over 3.5 Ks? I just pulled his numbers here, and I know you gave a great cap on that game, so I'd just like to follow up with your thoughts here. But this almost feels like a number that they're just kind of trotting out there. Maybe it's because he's on the A's. Maybe it's because the Padres are licking their chops for this series coming up here. But he's gone over 3.5 every outing this season. So it almost feels like that's a number that maybe hasn't been paid enough attention to. Do you have any worries about him and this Padres bats with this big price on going over that number, or is that a ticket that you might want to flirt with as well?
So we're saying Estes is 3.5 strikeouts. That's what you said for his prop?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I'm seeing
yeah,
here. Yeah, 3.5.
Yeah, I didn't check that one. That would seem very low to me because he's had
Yeah.
5 or more in 5 of his last 6. He's had 4 in the other one. So yeah, we'd have to check that one. But if that is the line, it would seem a little short.
3.5 even money on the strikeouts thrown.
I want to chime in there because over the weekend, Slade Ciccone pitched against the Padres, and I tweeted out that I thought that was kind of like, so his strikeout prop in that game over the weekend was 3.5 plus money against the Padres, and it landed 3. And it was a game that I didn't have action in personally, but I did watch quite a bit of it. And I will say this about the Padres, like when that lineup is on, and it seems like maybe they're on the way up, right? Like they had a horrific week. Going back to the Angels series where they got swept and couldn't score. When they're on, they don't strike out a ton. So maybe that's where you're getting like the low number because, I mean, Ciccone had a couple strikeouts early. And, he relied on the changeup. They battled him like crazy. So, that's probably where that comes from, in my opinion. I don't. And I watched a lot of Estes at Las Vegas. He in AAA, he was not a guy I was overly impressed with at the AAA level. I think he's kind of been shockingly good in the majors for the A's so far. So I think I would probably prefer to fade him. Like I don't know if I would back that. Like this seemed he could get blown up early here, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, Dan, real quick, I talked about the home road splits. The Padres have the fewest road strikeouts in baseball this year. The fourth fewest strikeouts in baseball, but they're only 15th in home strikeouts. They're middle of the pack. So this line would have made more sense on the road too, because as I said earlier, for some reason, it's a pitcher-friendly park also, don't forget. I mean, not that would affect strikeouts, but the Padres have not hit well at home this year. So you are probably safer playing the over 3.5, in a home game. But yeah, San Diego, the fewest road strikeouts, but middle of the pack at home.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you bring up there, Steve. I mean, as I'll say is, as far as the price goes, I definitely wouldn't be talking you into betting the under for Joey at that number, sitting at minus 125 at even money. Even if you do have some concerns, there are worse tickets you can have in your pocket than an even money, what seems to be on its face a mispriced number there. So great flag by our man Rick White. Good counterpoints on both sides there from our experts Steve Merril and Adam Trigger. And that's why you come here to the show, gentlemen, to get a varying opinions here that you get. Make sure you hit that like button while you're hanging out here with us. We would appreciate it. So they want to hear about Twins and Rockies. This is one of the games that we didn't have tabbed. We'll talk to O's and TB's Tampa Bay Rays coming up next here, gentlemen. But Twins Rockies, and Tyler puts out a good point. What about betting? I know all the time when we have some of these big favorites, I'll talk people into betting pitcher to record a win. Yes. He says Hudson to not record a win as a potential parlay piece for him. Trig, I'll start with you since we just followed up with Steve there, but I know you're not much into releasing some of these pitcher props, but any thoughts on that and really how maybe it leads you to handicap the game as well?
I mean, I'm not in love with Dakota Hudson and backing him in any way, so it's like hard to talk someone off of that, but at the same time, I mean, I think the only way I could play this game would be to find some way in with the Rockies, maybe just take the plus 1.5. I mean, this is probably, so just full disclosure, this was the game I got rid of the quickest today. I have probably the least opinion of this than any game. But, I mean, listen, the Twins, I've watched enough Twins. Like, this team just isn't playing good enough right now, in my opinion, to warrant, like, minus 250 with Chris Paddock on the mound. Even their win yesterday that kind of snapped their losing streak is a little bit deceiving, right? Because, they're going to, I just want to make sure I have the score right here. I believe they won 11-5, but they scored 7 of those runs in the 10th inning. They really, which is, we know how the extra innings are aided by the ghost runner at this point. Yeah. Our friend in the chat, Twins suck. I don't really disagree that much. Like, now I did pull up a stat on Friday when Steve and I were talking about the Twins. They have cleaned up against teams with losing records. So, even this weekend, I think, teams sub 500 teams, I think there's something like 19-6 against this year. something like that. So the Rockies certainly qualify in that regard. But man, I'm just like, I just want no part of the Twins at this price. So that's all I got.
Yeah, I always love the 2-word handicaps, just blank sucks. So we love that out of our man G Hurt. It's a great breakdown, and I mean it's one that you don't come on with many counterpoints for it. Tyler saying, do we just parlay this with anything? Steve, you were on Wager Talk today earlier, right after you were done and heading on your way. This was actually the big game breakdown. Yeah, I don't know how Teddy described this as a big game to break down, but he had some value that he liked in it. And he was saying, at this price, who the hell wants to lay it with the Twins? Like, that nice plus money price. I know, hey, it might not be Hudson who ends up getting them the win there, but I don't want to lay this price with the Twins either. I don't know if I'm taking that 2-1 on the Rockies, but that would be, if you want to say the value side, that would be the one for me, just like Teddy kind of said.
Dan, you and I think alike so often. In fact, when I was promoting on Wager Talk today, before I even got it out of my mouth, you put the 7 days for 77 special on the screen. I was so impressed by that. And my lead into this was going to be that Teddy Covers talked about this in his big game breakdown. And I was going to say, I have no clue what he gave out, because the minute I'm done with Prez, I click off and I go rinse off and scrub. And he was pretty clean today, actually. But yeah, I didn't stay to watch it. So you just let me know what he was using. So I don't disagree. And to Adam's point, by the way, Minnesota this year against non-winning teams, 22-10, 12-21 against winning teams. So it's pretty stark contrast.
Wow.
And Minnesota 34-31 on the season, despite 1-5 their last 6. This is a team that was 33-26 about a week ago, but they have a negative run differential on the season. That's the expected win-loss record I talk a lot about. So Minnesota was a phony team when they were 7-8 games above 500. They have come back down to earth. Did we see as you would love to know, the bottoming process yesterday? Perhaps. But I also will point out that the Sunday games are the most random games of the week, getaway afternoon games. I really don't read much into them. And the Twins had lost 5 straight before that, 6 of 7. The Rockies had actually played really good baseball on Friday and Saturday in St. Louis. They had 11 runs on 22 hits, not in the altitude, in St. Louis. Only 1 run, 5 hits on getaway day yesterday. So if you really disregard Sunday and look more at Friday, Saturday, which I think do have more meaning, the Rockies are in better current form. And like you guys have said, we're getting almost a 2-1 payout. Not a game I'm involved with tonight, but it'd be Rockies or pass. Like Adam said, find some way to get involved with Colorado if you're looking to play it.
Yeah, give me the Adam Trigger special. It's not crazy to take a run and a half here with the Rockies, with the price that you're seeing on the other side.
Adam Trigger special.
Well,
Put that on the wedding card,
that as well.
Hey, King Duck on the wedding sample card Friday. That's what I want to see from you.
I'll put that down on the sample card for you, Steve. Trig, you have anything final to say about this, and then we'll talk this O's game coming up here.
Well, I'll bring up the because someone in the chat just asked about the over, and I guess like the final thing I'll leave with this game is that the Twins lineup has shuffled a little bit lately. They've had a couple guys, Lewis is back, but he hasn't started every game, so I would want to make sure he's in there. Edouard Julien was down at St. Paul rehabbing. I would want to see him back in there. So like the Twins, because that's really been the issue with them is like the offense, but they do get a little bit of a breakout yesterday, even if it was aided by the 10th inning. Like they still saw 7 runs go on the board in an inning. That could be all the difference for their confidence. So 8.5 with the plus money seems like a tad low to me, especially when we talked about, the chat is trashing Dakota Hudson here. I told you Chris Paddock is garbage. Like 8.5 kind of seems a little low when you think about it, especially knowing that like if you get the Rockies scrub bullpen guys in here, like if this game, turns into like 4-0 or 5-1, like that could be 9-2 very quickly. Like, especially when you get the Rockies back end guys. Fair. So I thought it was shocking that the over was plus money. I would have thought that it would be like 8.5 would have been something like minus 120. And I'm seeing some places plus 105. So maybe some runs in this game.
RU Zen points out that the best way to bet on this game is to take the Orioles, which means swing it to the Orioles game here against the Tampa Bay Rays. Recent form This seems like just a slam dunk spot here for the O's, Steve. It always worries me when it seems so easy, but what is it? 12-4 over the last 16 here for Baltimore. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay is going to be coming in here, losing 3 straight. They were on a nice little run there, but nada. No, 3 straight loss for them, and they've been getting outscored by an insane clip. 20-5 the last 3 games. You look at their past 18, 93-57. So this is the slam dunk spot for the O's, and that kind of worries me about putting that into a parlay ticket. What do you think about this one, Steve?
Yeah, this is actually the Sunday game, right? Because it's a 4-game series, and we talked about how random Sundays are. So this, you could make that probably would be your handicap for Tampa, right? Is that it's the getaway 4th game of the series. They've already won 3. Fair. So this would be a situational cap for Tampa, but it is hard to make a case for them. I mean, they're ice cold offensively. Not only did they score a total of 5 runs in those last 3 games, they had only 2 and 6 hits the last 2 days. So it's hard for me to make a case, but I do agree. It seems a little too obvious. Not looking to fade the Orioles, but I also can't really make a case for Tampa. This is just a stay away game for me for that reason. And that is the one edge we have as a sports bettor, is that we don't have to play every game and they have to put lines on it. I've got a strong best bet tonight, a steamroller blowout in a different game, plus a bonus free play on my page. So I've got 2 of the other 6 games covered for my clients at WagerTalk.com, but this isn't one of them. And I was thinking a great stat I heard this week doing one of the many different shows I did. I always like to give credit when I hear something from someone. And I just remember, pretty sure it was Adam Trigger on Friday. Adam, you pointed out that the Orioles had not lost an AL East series in like the last 20 or 21 now, right? And they haven't lost this one either. That was a great angle. I had not seen that one. Right.
Steve, I believe it's 21, and that's just series. And if you like hammer down into like individual games, I mean, a lot of them, there's like multiple sweeps in there. This one could be a sweep. They have dominated the AL East. And the Rays are the antithesis? I don't know. Like what's the other, right? Like they're like on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're horrible against their division. So it certainly played out in this series right here.
Yeah. By the way, guys, they're 16-6 against the East this year. The Rays are 10-6, and I'll pull up last year real quick since we're talking about it. Orioles last year were 32-20. Rays were 31-21 last year. So that's been the big difference this year. Is that,
I could be thinking about someone else.
Well, no, this year Tampa's been bad.
I think the Rays suck. Like, I think the Rays suck. Like, I'm just going to put it out there. This team is like, I would look to bet against them in any. Like, they're just. So you got to remember, going to last year, they came out of the gate so insanely hot. They got to the All-Star break, and then like right around when all that Wander Franco stuff went down, they like just tanked and fell off a cliff. And I still think that the beginning of last year is priced into the number. When people think about the Rays, their bullpen isn't as good. The only thing that would concern me here is that Pepio, their starter, I forget how you say his last name, 185 batting average against this year. And he does have a good fastball. And the Orioles, believe it or not, have been fastballs 95 miles an hour or greater. The Orioles have one of the worst batting averages against that pitch of any team in the league. The Orioles hit off-speed pitching. That's what they hit not super high velo fastballs. So that's like the only thing that's a little bit of a concern. But maybe if you think about that and you've got Corbin Burns on the other side who's been lights out, maybe under 7, maybe 7.5 is too many. Maybe get a low scoring game. That's my thoughts here.
Yeah, sitting at 7.5. That's why the total ended up just being a stay away for me. You think of how it was hit in majority of the series, but then there was that 5-0 game. I think there's just too little much to predict in that one for me, as Steve said, with kind of the randomness of what you would think of as the Sunday game for this spot here. So comments are lighting up, though. We appreciate you guys. Keep dropping them there. Auto Area asking what the most guaranteed pick today is for MLB. Well, best bets are coming up here, but if you want the true best bets, check these guys out over at WagerTalk.com. A great special week. Now you can lock in 7 days of access for $11 a day. 77 gets you 7 days of all access. Steve mentioned on WagerTalk today, usually 2 to 3 plays. Volume is similar for Adam, so a great discount to get you rocking through the rest of the week. Plus, getting you action. $77 will get you locked in. That's the true best bets. But don't worry, auto area. We got best bets coming your way right here on the show. Before that, just want to touch upon a comment that we had from Bruce over on the YouTube Shorts feed. A more high-level question, handicapping spots. You talked about, sandwich games and how it should come back for Marco. Bruce was asking, when a team breaks a losing streak, what's the thought on going right back to them again? You finally get the monkey off your back. You get some positive regression going. He says, is that a good theory or not? He uses it in reference to the Twins and Rockies game. It was a theory that he used to bet the White Sox the past weekend against Boston. So question for both of you guys. Steve, I'll start with you. As far as breaking a losing streak, do you think there's some positive momentum coming out of that? Or is it more just an exhale spot? The theory of riding the team, whether they're hot, whether they're cold, auto fades, auto bet on, or do you like learning a little bit more? They get the monkey off their back. You try to look, maybe bet them live in the next game if it does seem like there's some excitement, some wind in their sails. Good question there, I thought, from Bruce.
Yeah, I've got a very in-depth answer. It depends. No, it really does depend. I've researched this in the past.
They suck.
No, it's the true answer, though, but I'll give you some tips on what to look for, because this is what we talk about. As you know, Dan, it's a bottoming process. It's not just one game. We need to see some confirmation that falling knife has hit the ground. And, the White Sox snapped the 14-game losing streak on Friday night. I had a best bet on Chicago Friday for my clients at WagerTalk.com. Grishett was on the mound. We talked about it here on the show. He's an ace, and they were favored. 14-game losing streak, they were a small favorite for the right reason. So baseball is such a pitcher-dependent sport. You got to make sure they didn't just win because they had an ace on the mound. You want to see offensive momentum. And when the White Sox went 3-22, they then became the most profitable team in baseball for the next 2 weeks after that. Then they lost 14 straight games until Friday. Offensive momentum obviously plays a big role in that. So I'd like to see teams start to hit the ball. The Twins, when they went cold, they started to struggle. We talked about your Phillies last week. They were winning, but they weren't hitting the ball. That's always a red flag for me, because you can't have the same ace pitcher on the mound every day of the week. So I would look that would make my short list, but I would still want to verify another reason or two to play the team. I will say this, though. I've researched this decades ago in the NBA, point spread sports. The NBA, a really bad team that snapped a long losing streak was actually a fade in the next game. So it's definitely not an automatic buy. And like you just said, a lot of times they do exhale. There is something to that, because there's so much pressure to get a win. There's a letdown, and then you come back and maybe play them the second, third game after that if they're starting to turn the corner. That's why it's a process, and you want to see more than one game.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Trig, as far as formulaic plays across any sport, it's not something that I typically dabble in, especially in a daily sport like baseball. Like if you're just trying to find a trend that works for you and run with it, sure. But when it's kind of like a blanket approach, like Bruce is asking here, where, hey, regardless of the team, regardless of the spot, is it a theory that works? I don't subscribe to that really across any sport as far as using those formulaic approaches. But as Steve said, adapting them and turning them into a part that maybe you look at as you're trying to handicap all of these teams, it's definitely something I would put into an approach, but it would never be an auto play enough to take me off a team or put them on a team as a full handicap. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I'll have teams that I kind of have in mind that I think could win multiple in a row. Like for example, I was kind of in that space over the weekend with the Marlins. I thought that they called a couple guys up. So they had lost like 4 straight. I cashed with them on Friday. They win, and it was one of their best wins of the season when you consider like they made all the plays they needed to make. They got the timely hit, like very un-Marlin like this year, if you will, the way they won that game on Friday against the Guardians. And it was enough to get me interested to come back the next day. And, they ended up losing the rest of the week. I played them on Saturday. I did not play them on Sunday. So it's like, the way that Saturday's game went, getting blown out, I said, okay, I'm going to pump the brakes now. So for me, I never like premeditated say, okay, I'm just going to keep playing this team. But I do have it like in mind this is a team I might go back with a couple games. I'll give you a good example of a team that the second they won a game, I was kind of like, okay, done betting against this team for now. That's the Padres. And, kind of like last week, I talked about like maybe wanting to jump in with the Diamondbacks at some point in that series. I think, Dan, maybe you and I did a video on it at some point early last week. And as soon as the Padres kind of like broke out offensively and won one, I was like, nope, this is a team that I feel like once they figure it out, they might be able to rattle off 7-8 straight. And so, that would be a team where I either try to find a way to play them. Of course, tonight, minus 230 might be difficult, but I'm kind of staying away from them. So I guess I use it more for that reason, but I'm not just going to just like, I don't like the formula thing. Every day is different. Every game is different. It's got to just be like every single game on an island, and one will pop up that like all the boxes check, and then you go with that game. That's kind of how I work.
I love it. That's Adam Trigger, WT.buzz/AT. Great question there from our man Bruce. Shout out to the chat. You got Dat Boy in there, Rick White, Lord Farquaad, my man, Auto Area, Robert checking in over on YouTube Shorts, Trap House, Boomin', Cuban Connect. We appreciate all of you and your terrific usernames. So while you're hanging out with us, hit that like button. Eric D saying, if we get 200 likes, Dan will play the guitar behind him. Sure. We'll throw that gauntlet down. I'll keep looking at some of these videos. When we get over 200 likes on one of them, we'll do something a little special for you here on First Pitch. So there, how about that for pandering for likes here? Steve, let's talk some best bets. Before that, Lord Farquaad was asking, do we have any Nerfies? If you want free Nerfies on a daily basis, you can go and check out Ralph Michaels' page or follow him on Twitter at CalSportsLV. He's kind of become Mr. Yerfy and Nerfy here with the charts that he breaks down. For me, the no-run first inning would be the game we talked about earlier. KC Royals, New York Yankees, Rodon, Lugo. I don't care if it's the Yankees' insane hitting lineup. Give me the Nerfy in that one. That'll be the no-run first inning play for me, Farquaad. But if you want more, definitely check out Ralph Michaels. He is on an insane run handicapping those Yerfies and Nerfies. All right, Steve, best bet. Blue Jays, Brewers. Can't be much confidence for the Brewers heading into this 6-game homestand. That road trip wasn't good to them. They won just 2 games. Coming off a 10-2 loss yesterday to the Tigres. 10 innings is what it took for Toronto, but they did get the win against a bad team. But still, maybe some positive signs for the Blue Jays heading into this one against a team that can't be feeling too great. How are you looking to bet this one, and what do you have up over at WagerTalk, Steve?
Yeah, I don't think you hear the background, but a fighter jet is going over right now, so I'll wave the flag. I always wave the flag when the fighter jet goes, just so they know so we don't have any friendly fire incidents here while I'm doing Wager Talk Live, Wager Talk TV. They're trying to get some free picks with their sonar. We got a great special this week, 7 days for $77. It's quite simple, no promo code needed. The math works out perfect. It's $11 a day. That's an instant discount off the normal 7-day package. In fact, a 3-day package alone, I believe, is $69. So you're getting 4 more days for just $8. That's just $2 a day. And I have about 2 to 3 best bets with baseball and basketball, so it works out to about $5 a play for the next week. That's every baseball best bet, including a strong steamroller blowout tonight on Monday. Bonus free play on my page, as always. But don't forget about the NBA playoffs. Game 3 is Wednesday. Game 4, I believe, is Friday. And we have at least a Game 5, perhaps, if Dallas can win one of these two. So you're getting at least 2 to 3 days of the NBA included as well. And I'm number 1 this season and number 1 all time in units 1 in the NBA at wagertalk.com. So check out the 7 days for $77. Free play tonight. It's actually on my page now if you'd like to go read the analysis, but I'll give it to you here on the show as well. And that's the Blue Jays, even money. I think it's a good situation for Toronto. They remain on the road, traveling after their series in Oakland, so they'll be ready to go. And Milwaukee, meanwhile, returns home, as you said, Dan, against Philly. Dan's Philadelphia Phillies and Johnny Detroit's Tigers, and they did not fare well, going just 2-4, and the offense really struggled. In fact, those 3 losses at Philly, 2 total runs in 3 games, and they've now had 2 runs or less in 4 of the last 6. Return home without rest. I don't think it's a good spot. Toronto, the better team, better situation, and we get them as a dog. Take a look at Toronto, even money, a game that was just a bit outside for making the cut, and that's because I have a strong MLB steamroller best bet for tonight for my client, Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com.
Check him out over there. wd.buzz/SM is the quick way to get there. All right, Trig, we have talked every game on the card in less than 45 minutes. Impressive stuff. So if that's not a reason to hit the like button and subscribe, I don't know what is. Trig, what do you have up over at WagerTalk.com? And Astros and Giants, the lone game left here, the nightcap. How are you looking to bet this battle of young pitchers? Kind of an intriguing one here heading into the end of the slate on Monday's card. What say you?
Yeah, so here's a good example of what we were talking about. I had this spot circled for the Astros for a few days. I knew that the Giants were going to come back from Texas without a day off. They played road series, and they were going to have to come and play this game on a Monday night where, oftentimes they'd be given an off day. The reason I thought that was important is I thought this might potentially be the Spencer Howard like bullpen day type spot, but they ended up going with that over the weekend. So it's not, but I had this spot circled for the Astros. And then the Astros did what it seems like they've been doing to like kill every one of their runs this season. And that's blow a game late. Yesterday, Astros going for a sweep, going to the 8th inning, up 7-5, get walked off in the 9th. Another blown save for Josh Hader. The only team, Dan, that has now blown more games in the 8th inning or later this year than the Astros is the Mets. So it continues happening, and it's like, it kind of has been what seems to kill their vibe every time they get going a little bit, right? We've been waiting for the Astros to get going. We actually talked about the Astros on Friday. I said I thought that they would do well in that series, and they almost swept until, of course, last night, blowing that game in that fashion. And it caused me to maybe pump the brakes a little bit here. The other reason is the way, of course, yesterday's game played out. And then you've got Presley getting blown up. And now you could be looking at a couple of guys that just end up getting the day off in the Astros bullpen. But that might not be as big of an issue because the Astros bullpen just hasn't been very good this year anyway. So I think that that's probably all sort of baked in. And we'll work back to front here, right? Like the Giants bullpen has been a disaster this year. They've had a bottom 5 bullpen all season. And I actually think their recent bullpen numbers are inflated a little bit by the fact that they've gone with an opener in a couple of games. And then the bulk innings guy has had some success. But as you know, Dan, that's really more like your starter having success. Those innings, if you go innings 2 through 5 with a bulk reliever, that's not the same as your bullpen. Like that's not your bullpen in innings 6, 7, 8, and 9, which, the Giants haven't been great in either. So I think you've got 2 pretty poor bullpens here, which brings us back to the 2 young starters that you referenced. And I think one of them is in a much better spot than another right now. These are both guys that I talked about very early in the season. I came into the season really liking Kyle Harrison. And now the last couple times he's pitched, Dan, we were all over this. We did videos for both of these before the Phillies game and again before the Diamondbacks game. And I said, man, he's throwing his fastball right over the middle of the plate. It's 94 miles an hour. Typically, you can't do that at the big league level. Last 2 games, he's given up 20 hits and 7 runs in 11 innings pitched. He's just gotten, everything's been hit hard on him. And, the Astros, even with some lineup injuries, right? Like, they've been dealing with Tucker and Bregman both being hurt. Like, they're not really struggling to hit the ball. 14 hit. They had double-digit hits every single game against the Angels over the weekend. Yesterday, 7 runs on 14 hits. Wasn't the offense's fault that didn't get, that didn't get going. And now, you've got the graphic up on the screen talking about the Giants bullpen, Doval with all those pitches thrown. Like, I still think when you put these 2 teams next to each other, their records are similar. The books have them power rated similar right now. I don't think these 2 teams are similar. I think the Astros are still clearly better than the Giants, especially when you kind of take all of the Giants' injuries into consideration. And now we talked about Harrison and the fact that he's catching a lot of the plate. He's, started to have some growing pains now that guys are sitting on his fastball. Spencer Arrighetti's kind of gone the other way. He got rushed to the big leagues in a spot where the Astros needed a starter because everyone was hurt. He wasn't supposed to get called up this early. And then when he got called up, he had to face the Royals and the Braves and the Yankees, like the top lineups in the league, and they just obliterated him for 5 games. Now that he's had some time to settle in, Arrigetti's last 5 starts, 3.55 ERA, he's been really good. And the other thing I've noticed with him is he's figured out how to, like, he's accepted the fact that he's going to walk a couple guys. It's just the way that he pitches. He goes for a lot of swing and miss, and he likes to live on the edges, but he's so much more willing to, like, throw strikes now when he needs to than he was in the first 5 starts, where he was trying to be perfect, and then suddenly the bases would be loaded, and he'd put one over the middle and give up a grand slam or a 3-run homer. Hasn't really done that at all lately, and now you're getting a Giants lineup that, you know, pretty pedestrian, all things considered. They've been better than they were in the beginning of the season, but then you take out guys like Jung Ho Lee, Wade's been battling injury. You know, they've had a bunch of guys that have either, you know, just come back from injury or have been hurt. So I could see him having some success here. Again, it didn't line up perfectly for me. I am concerned a little bit about the Astros bullpen, but I think the Giants pen might be worse. So I thought for sure I would have a client play on Astros minus 110. I decided against it, at least for now. I could, you know, come back and add it, I suppose. Might wait to see for a lineup, see if they, you know, if Bregman's back or not. But I do think the Astros are the play here, and I will probably jump in with them at some point in the series. I don't know if it's here, but it's certainly the way I lean tonight. So Astros minus 110 will be my best bet for the show. And I do have a 4% play that I love. That's up on my page right now. I've hit 10 of my last 12 best bets in baseball, and I hope to have another one tonight.
Running hot. Check these guys out with that $77 special for 7 days of all access. WT.buzz/deals for more details on that. Trig going with the Stros over the Giants. Money line for his best bet. Steve Merril fading the Brewers, taking some even money play with the Blue Jays for his best bet. We appreciate you joining us on a Monday edition. We'll be locked and loaded for Tuesday as well. Hop below in the comments and let us know what some of your best plays are. We love hearing from you. And while you're down there, make sure you hit that like button and you are subscribed. Big thanks to Steve Merril. Big thanks to Adam Trigger as well. We will be back locked and loaded. Until then, folks, don't go anywhere. You stay right here on this channel. It gets you all the info you need to bet all the sports you love. We do it on an hourly basis, up to the minute basis with those daily videos that we're putting out across all sports. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you on Tuesday. Until then, best of luck, everyone.